Okay, well, good morning. I am Arnerich, Mayor of Danville, and today we are here for Danville Town Talks Live, our first opportunity to reach out to the public and have a really interesting discussion today about something that we all hold dear to our heart, and it's about Old Town Danville and our downtown master plan update. I'd also like to wish everybody a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year on behalf of the entire council, myself, Vice Mayor Robert Storr, council members Karen Stepper, Renee Morgan, and Dave Fong. We're excited to be able to have this opportunity to carry on the first Friday of each month for the next 12 months, topics to cover Danville and what's happening. This year, particularly for the first quarter, you're going to hear a lot about what's actually happening right here, what we're doing, the challenges we have, and the wonderful opportunities. And today, starting off on that opportunity, we're going to talk about the opportunities of downtown, why we love it, what we can do to help enhance it, and some of the things that we've done in the past. And to sort of get us started, I'm going to play a short little video I put together to get us into the mood, particularly on a Friday. So grab your coffee or your tea. I have my Pete's decaf coffee. Let's get started and let's listen to and watch a short video here. Well, that was just a little introduction to show us some of the images that make, I think, Danville one of the most unique places in the state of California. And today, I'm excited to be joined by a panel discussion with three people who have something in common. And it's not just because they work for the town of Danville, but today we're joined by our Assistant Town Manager, Ty Williams. Good morning, Ty.
Good morning.
And our Economic Development Director, Jill Bergman. Good morning, Jill.
Morning, Mayor.
And also David Crompton, our Director and Chief of Planning, David Crompton. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
So as we're still in this Hollywood format squares, you get 3 X's if you could answer this rhetorical question. What do the 3 of these people have in common? And I already told you, it's not that they just work for the town of Danville. I will also add that they also share the same thing in common with our town manager, Joe Calabriga. And I have a little bit of that background too. These are 3 planners who all were at the town of Danville in the planning department many years ago. David is now the head of that department. Jill has moved over to economic development, and Ty has moved all the way up to being our assistant town manager. That's no mistake that today we're going to talk about this subject with these 3 people, because what makes Danville so important and such a beautiful place to live and raise our families in is how it's been planned. And that's what led Danville back in 1982 to break away from the county and become an independently incorporated community. And that was based in parks, public works, police, and planning. And it's those 4 Ps that we wanted control of to create our own destiny. And we've spent a lot of time over the years, and nearly $130 million over the past 40 years since 1982, in helping reinvent the downtown many, many times. And Ty Williams actually has a real hands-on experience, because our last big capital improvement project was to develop the wayfinding, our signage, redoing the streets, resurfacing, doing crosswalks, doing bulb outs and all of those things. And like in the background up here, you can kind of see some of those signage there that you'll see as you walk around Danville. So Ty, I think we're going to start off with you, then we're going to go to Jill, and then Dave, we're going to you last. And Dave, sorry if we go to you last. You know, most people have a tendency to cover things, but we'll save a spot for you. Ty, why don't you tell us kind of in a high-level view, and I know Jill's got some exciting things, so don't give that one away, about a way that each of us and those that are listening and all of our residents can participate in how we vision and revision that. So can you give us sort of that high-level view of what are we trying to accomplish and what are the opportunities?
Well, absolutely. Good morning and thank you, Mayor. I think what we all know is that we love the town of Danville, and specifically we love the heart of our community, which is our downtown. And I don't think we really understood how much we have embraced our downtown as the place that we gather, as we have discovered during the pandemic. I think some of your pictures, your little slideshow really illustrated that, right? It's a place that our community loves to connect. So I think this effort, a main driver behind that, is really to look back at the pandemic and figure out how do we leverage those needs of our community and kind of reimagine some of those public spaces so that we make it into more permanent opportunities for our community to connect with each other. So at a very high level, it's about enhancing and permanent spaces to reconnect and connect in the future.
Great, Ty. What do you think when you look back, because you were involved in obviously the last big capital improvement program, and that was the first time, as I recall, that we actually encompassed all of downtown. What I mean by that, that's all of Railroad. Mm-hmm. And if you've been here long enough, Railroad didn't used to go all the way through. It stopped, I think, at Prospect.
Yes.
And there was no connection all the way to Love Lane. The Clock Tower parking lot back in the 60s, as I recall, was a cement plant. Mm-hmm. So what are the things that you've seen changed? And maybe could you highlight some of those capital investments? How did we spend $130 million and what did we accomplish? Maybe a high view of those assets that we have in place.
Absolutely. Friends and family who visit, they are just astounded by what a jewel we have, right? And I like to remind them, just as you do and our town manager does, that it was really a jewel that was polished over 30 plus years. We had a beautiful start in the historic core, right on Harts Avenue. But as the town council over generations have envisioned, we moved that to Railroad Avenue, along San Ramon Valley Boulevard. And many of those investments began with all of the street lighting and the brick banding and all those little things that people notice in whole and in a comprehensive view, but might not pick up are, the details, like the wayfinding signs that you see behind you in your background, the street furniture and the street lighting standards that are decorative, but not too decorative. The fact I like to point out that all of our street furniture is painted a Danville green, which is not a forest green, it's not a black, it's something in between, right? And cohesively, we connect the entirety of the downtown from San Ramon Valley Boulevard up Harts Avenue, all the way up to the northern end of the downtown with all of that brick banding on all of that cohesive visual street furniture over many, many years. And of course, as you enter the downtown from the freeway, you start getting visual cues that you're going to enter a very special place with careful placement of all of those visual components.
Well, and I would just add to that, obviously parking, probably the single biggest expense other than the roads and those things, has been the incredible amount of parking that we put in there to help support businesses and create that economic vitality. How many spaces do we have, Sid? And we have the Clock Tower parking lot. We have the Railroad parking lot, which is between Lenardi's and Museum of San Ramon Valley. Mm-hmm. We have the parking lot next to the town meeting hall, kind of connects to the back corner of the Veterans Building and Senior Center. And then we have next to the Village Theater, we have another parking lot. We have the Community Center Library parking lot. And then we have at the north end, we have the parking lot there opposite the newest store that's our restaurant that opened up, Hazy Barbecue, there on Linda Mesa at Rose Street. Mm-hmm.
You know, off the top of my head, now that's a pop quiz answer that I don't have the answer to, but I would venture to guess we have close to 1,000 parking spaces in downtown Danville. But I think the more important thing to highlight is the fact that unlike some communities where all of the parking is right in front of buildings, making it look like one giant strip mall, right? The town has carefully placed all of the parking behind our buildings so that, you know, the things that we love most about downtown Danville, that small scale pedestrian feel, isn't taken away by a sea of parking right in front of all of the buildings. So we carefully tuck them behind the buildings. People can still have access to them. We created what we call little paseos or little archways so that people can walk from the parking to the downtown area. And so a lot of careful planning connectivity from parking to shopping to dining.
That's great. And I think I hear it always because the council has to appropriate that money. We've had to save that money over many years, but it costs the town nearly $60,000 a parking space. That's an incredible cost.
I'm sorry, Mayor, but I think it's up to like 70-something thousand now.
Well, I guess after the last round, because Danville dirt has just gotten more expensive.
Yes, yes.
You know, before I go to Jill, I would just mention, and I know this is probably one of the reasons I got involved in the town of Danville to get on the council, was back between 93 and 95, downtown Danville got upwards of 40% vacancy rate. You could lease a space for about 90 cents a square foot. Rents downtown are anywhere from $4 to $7 a square foot. And there are only about a half a dozen vacant spaces now. And it's really changed. And what's interesting is, why was it vacant in those days? What happened? Well, the first major downturn in the economy happened between 93, 94, 95 began that recovery. And that was primarily in the state of California. And it was really as a result of a post-Prop 13 issue that finally caught up on taxes and funding government and things like that. Danville was affected by that because it affected people's spending, the economy, jobs were down, and it looked pretty shabby. And I know we're going to talk later to David about some of those assets we put in place, about preserving our historical resources, creating investment incentives and things like that. But that's something to keep in mind. Where were we? Where are we today? And what opportunities are we headed towards? Which takes us to Jill Bergman. Jill, you started off as a planner here and did a most amazing work on many assets around the community, worked on the downtown plan in the past, and then started working special events, which are the celebrations that bring us downtown, and then eventually took over on economic development. And you're kind of the lead person, you and David, really on this, on relooking this. Can you share with us, we've retained a consultant, very top firm. Can you talk about who they are, what their background is, and kind of what that scope is? What are they looking at this point?
Sure. So yeah, after reaching out and doing a RFP, we were able to hire a very well-renowned international firm that does international work, which is SWA. Laguna Beach is where our consultants are from for this office. And they, the one thing that was very impressive about them as to why we ended up contracting with them was their vision. They had a lot of vision on what could happen when it comes to placemaking and when it comes to trying to create these gathering spaces that really engage the community to want to come down to a downtown or to want to experience, as well as visitors kind of coming and attracting. So the vision of looking at how you can, again, enhance your street furniture, take opportunities to improve lighting, looking at ways that maybe there's certain areas in your community that could be activated better. So that's one of the main reasons why we brought this firm on, was more for the vision and their experience. They have just a broad range of experience. And we're really excited because the scope of this project, as Ty kind of touched a little bit on the high level part of it, is really to look at how we can do that same thing with our community and enhance it. We have done so many beautiful improvements to date, but what else can we do? What else can we do to look at opportunities to kind of reimagine different areas of our downtown? Are there areas where it might make sense to widen the sidewalks? areas to activate with entertainment nodes? Do we look at areas that could improve lighting and enhance that, which then ultimately could include more activated space at night? There's just a lot of other things like that. How do you look at providing more opportunities for people to be able to get to downtown through better signage, as well as parking, like if they're going to take their bikes rather than maybe driving down. It's like, just encouraging all modes of transportation, making it really a nice community center, as well as kind of looking at what future opportunities we can have. So the one thing as part of the scope for this particular project is that was mentioned was looking really at the core, our core historic downtown as the main opportunity of focus in this first phase. And so that's one of the things that is the main overarching thing that we'll be looking at as part of this process. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to kind of look at some opportunities for what we could study further in the future. We have a relatively short timeline in place, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And so we want to be able to make sure that we're kind of really hitting on something that we can start to see tangible results. And that's why it's mainly the downtown core. But the exciting part is there will be visioning ability and things that might come out of this plan or any updates to the downtown master plan that will really help us guide for in the future, other things that we could be looking at and consider as we move forward.
That's great. So Jill, why is it important? I mentioned what downtown used to look like in the past and the investments we made. How do we look at this from a business perspective and revitalization? Why is it important, and how is this going to benefit downtown businesses?
Yeah. That's a really good question. There's a couple of reasons why this is really important for our downtown businesses. One main thing is business attraction. And as we all know, one of the things that kind of accelerated through the pandemic was really a shift in something that was already happening, which was people buying online and getting their goods, in a different way. And so it really kind of changed the dynamic of how our businesses were visited and retailers. As well as our restaurants. I mean, the pandemic also shifted the ability for, with getting food and so forth. So a lot of the businesses adapted to those things and are doing a great job at adapting, by providing delivery or pickups or different type meals to take out. So with everything, we kind of look at, all right, as trends adapt, how do we look at ways that we can support the businesses we have in our community? And one of the things that Danville, although it's just the most charming downtown, the one thing that we continually compete with is a lot of our larger neighboring cities. So we have to look at opportunities to be able to, to make it in more of an exciting, attractive destination, not only for business attraction, but for folks to come into the community. So with doing that, you want to look at what's happening with those shifts and changes and how can some improvements happen that will help foster that. And I mean, a prime example would be, if you look at the parklets, that happened nationwide where everyone needed to, provide expanded outdoor dining because of COVID and the regulations. And they're beloved by a lot of people. And so when you look at that, that was a temporary solution. So as part of this process that we're doing, we're going to be studying that as to what types of opportunities could eventually help to make them, a little bit more architecturally compatible with our community, whether it's temporary, whether there's permanent. Again, back to that placemaking, where are the opportunities where those types of things could potentially occur to be able to kind of help our business community. And the same thing for entertainment. When we look at those types of improvements and the things we want to look down, a lot of it's about business attraction. And so when you get people into your community and downtown engaging and lingering longer, then they start, they're actually experiencing not only the assets you have in your community, but the businesses that are there as well. And that ultimately becomes a strong attractor for other businesses to want to come to your community.
And it's interesting as you talk about that connection. COVID did do a couple of things. There's the horrible side and the sickness and all of that. But within communities like Danville, the parklets and the need for people and the desire to still want to connect in a safe environment, it demonstrated that outdoor dining was lacking. And while we had great, beautiful restaurants with great air conditioning and stuff, people were willing to sit out in the rain under structures and things like that and enjoy that. So what sort of opportunities do you think we have in developing and helping encourage more outdoor dining, but also making sure we follow kind of a level playing field? And what I mean by that, there are property owners that have a restaurant and they have no parking. So they got to build a larger building, and in turn, they had to pay an off-site parking fee to help contribute, to help build parking places off-site. So that's a huge cost for them versus a property owner who built a small building and put lots of parking. So to make that a level playing field, what is that opportunity and how does that look like as we go forward?
Yeah, a loaded question there.
I know that's complicated. David can help, I'll help too.
Well, I say loaded based on level playing field because, you know, that it makes it very challenging for all businesses to have that type of an asset. But one of the things that I would speak to is the opportunity for expanded outdoor dining. And, you know, we're fortunate that we already have programs in place to be able to allow for that for a lot of the properties who have those private parking lots. And we have a process where they can go through a development plan and, you know, go back through the Planning Commission and be able to modify some of their areas to be able to enhance and, you know, their downtown areas. And we're seeing that, which is exciting. And I think it's because a result of the pandemic, it became a realization for the business owner to know that this is the right time to do it. So if you look at one example would be the Primo's parking lot. They actually have a development application in right now to convert that area into an outdoor dining, expanded outdoor dining for both Primo's and Yogurt Shack. But then also they're taking advantage of one of the policies that the town council adopted several years back, which was looking to allow for dedicating some of the space on their property for public engagement and public use. And then what that does is it helps offset some of their parking in lieu costs, you know, to be able to, make the numbers work. And the Primo's example will be an excellent example of that because of how they kind of are going to be developing a nice gathering area for folks to be able to sit, enjoy. On that corner, you're already seeing the clock tower, which took advantage of that as well. So we're getting another activated space very close to that. So it's really going to start to change the dynamics of downtown as these businesses start to look at those opportunities. And so we are, you know, encouraging all restaurants that have the ability to do that to come start talking with us now. Let's talk through that process and see what we can do to be able to, you know, be successful with that. And then through this process of the downtown master plan update, you know, this really gives us the ability to study further what could possibly happen in other locations. Because as you know, you really need to look at your infrastructure and other considerations in terms of where you can and can't make specific improvements to be able to accommodate this type of a use. So that's really, you know, one of the things that goes into the overall planning. It's like we would love to be able to do things in all places and make it equal for all, but we have to also be mindful of our future, you know, for the community itself, as well as, you know, tenant mix and how that shifts over time. And so there's a multitude of ways in which restaurants can be able to try and enhance that dining. And all they have to do is call David and I. Great.
Well, so speaking of David, Jill, thank you for that. As we're going to sort of go around here, we're going to sort of build the foundation of how we got here and a little bit, and we're going to come back with a way we can engage the public and how others are going to participate as well. David, you've been with the town as long as I have, and you helped build that foundation of our ordinances, went through all of the past master plans that we've done and the updates. Can you share with us a little bit about kind of how we got here? What were some of the kind of after the 93, 94 downturn? You know, the council went through Planning Commission and developed some standards, and particularly in our historic resource area. And I know we created an award-winning ordinance that kind of helped guide that. Can you describe some of those things that we've done and what's the effect? What happened after we did those?
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll go back a little bit further, all the way back to 1986, which was when we approved our current downtown master plan. And if you look at that, that was not too long after incorporation, and the initial town council had a real vision for, the future of Danville and how it should look. So if you go back and look at that master plan and the vision that had, it's really pretty telling that, if you look at what that says and what we did and what downtown Danville looks like now, it was really a great document. It was really followed, very well. And so that's kind of where it started. But that master plan also had to be implemented through zoning. And so that's when we adopted our downtown business district ordinance. And it's a very detailed ordinance. It has 13 different districts in it, all with different land uses and development standards, starting with the core downtown, which is our district number 1. And it's probably the most restrictive because we wanted to really have ground floor uses that are pedestrian friendly. So for the most part, it limits ground floor to retail and restaurant uses. Offices and other things are allowed upstairs. Then as you get outside the core, the ordinance kind of loosens up with additional uses, such as personal services and exercise and other uses that kind of support the downtown, but aren't necessarily right in the downtown. And then the ordinance has, very specific development standards, which really guide the physical design of the downtown area. So, it has direction for, what type of setbacks do we need from property lines? What type of height limitations? What type of, floor area ratio, which is, the size of the building compared to the property size. So all those types of development standards are really what create the character of downtown. So that's the look of our downtown. And so, we've followed that very closely. Newell was at one time a planning commissioner. He was also a design review board member. And so, from the very smallest things, from new signs to new ordinance, new awnings, to outdoor seating areas, to additions to buildings or brand new buildings, are all scrutinized at a very detailed level through staff reviews, through our design review board, through our planning commission, and to our town council. So we compared to other cities, I think we have a very detailed review process that really kind of results in what we see downtown. There's also very detailed design standards that we follow for new developments. Then as you get into our historic, we're very lucky that we have a historic downtown with a lot of historic buildings. Back in the 80s, we acknowledged that, and we created a historic heritage resource commission. We have a historic preservation ordinance. And as Neil said, we created a historic design guidelines for our downtown area that was an award-winning document. So, we've been very lucky. We've had a lot of reinvestment in our historic resources. We've created incentives. So we've seen a lot of folks that want to, say, build a new building behind the historic resource and come forward and do a really nice renovation of the historic resource, build a new building behind it. Our design guidelines for historic resources tell us kind of how those types of additions or remodels or renovations should look. I think we've done a pretty good job of following that. Town council authorized incentive packages for historic resources. So if somebody wants to come forward and renovate a historic resource and maybe do an addition, we look at waiving fees like our offsite parking lieu fees and other building permit fees. And so I think, with our Heritage Resource Commission review, done a really good job with that. Our Heritage Resource Commission is also very involved in public outreach. They're out there. If people have noticed, for the last 3 or 4 years, we've had a number of public unveiling ceremonies. They're doing historic plaques that they are installed on all our designated heritage resources downtown, and those look really great. And so we're continuing to work on those. And so, it's really the implementation and really the sweating all the details that's laid out for us in our downtown ordinance that really lays out all those standards that we as planners, not only creating new general plans and working on housing elements and working on downtown master plans, we also look at the day-to-day implementation, the nuts and bolts of how we're going to make that translate into what we see downtown.
David, thank you. That's a great summary. One of the things that when we were talking about historic resource, I just remembered two other points. One, we also have a separate design review board just for historic projects. But I don't think what most people know is the town, as much as we would like to have authority over everything, we don't have the authority to force somebody to preserve their building. So I think, as you described, it's an incentive program, and it took a long time, as I recall, to get it to the point where the majority of those property owners that have those assets that we really wanted to preserve, they did so. In fact, we've seen just one that's on right opposite Lenardi's, next to the Smith Jewelry Building, or formerly called. There was an addition, another one behind the Doyle House off of there. David, can you describe a little bit, how is it? I mean, downtown was a lot of single family residences because the town was originally founded back in the early 1850s. Towns were, where were they? They were always next to the river. So Front Street was Main Street. Harts Avenue didn't exist. And it wasn't until the railroad that came in 1891 that that's when business jumped and went over there. But in between that, that's where John Hart's developed, mapped it all out. And that's why you see so many houses. And from our pet store to a cigar shop, I mean, all those places, those are little houses. So what was the enabling factor, and how did it manifest itself on preserving these, and what did we offer back to those people?
And so, it really started with the town's general plan. After incorporation, we created a general plan. We have a section in our general plan that talks about heritage preservation. I think that the fact that we have this jewel downtown that starts with, these historic buildings that really creates the character. I think, the fact that we have a lot of historic resources that are single story that front the street, and for the most part, the two-story elements have been kind of put behind it. That's really what kind of helps the character of the downtown. And then just prioritizing that, we want to preserve these to the extent that we can. As you said, it is a voluntary program for our heritage resources. So we have to, we do a lot of public outreach, and we talk to property owners, and we talk to them about, property owners that have historic resources, and we talk to them about the program and the historic incentives that we can offer. I think that we have about 22 buildings downtown that are actually designated heritage resources, which means that, once they're designated, it means that any significant modification they want to do has to go back to a design review process. We have, as you said, we have this historic design review committee that makes recommendations, that they're kind of look at the nuts and bolts, and then they make recommendations to our Heritage Resource Commission. So anything that those property owners would like to do, they, just because you're designated doesn't mean that you can't still develop the property. It just has to be done in a way that is consistent with our design guidelines and doesn't diminish the character of the heritage resources. And then I think we've got about 5 others. We have a designated tree that's a heritage resource. We have a couple parks and a couple other buildings. But it's that vision that starts with these master plans and our general plan, and then the ordinances, our historic preservation ordinance, which implements the nuts and bolts of that that we follow very closely. That leads to what you see downtown today.
David, thanks for that. And I think what that also reminds me is that Danville has tough standards. They're high standards. We don't have absolute authority. So when it comes to historic preservation, it's by mutual agreement. But we've come up with a pretty good palette and offering to entice those owners to do that. And thus far, we've largely gotten that. And we've tweaked that along the way. And we've had a lot of success, particularly along the older section of Railroad, obviously along Harts Avenue, and particularly on East Prospect. we've had a lot of wonderful development, redevelopment in those areas. So one last thing, and I don't know, Ty, maybe you want to touch on this before we kind of circle back to exactly what we're doing now, what are the opportunities. What happened in the north end of town? For years and years, everybody held their hand up, and when you got to Linda Mesa, which is where Peach Brass Rail and Hazy Barbecue, if you look northwards of high school, you kind of went like this because you didn't want to look at it. It didn't look like Danville. Now, in all fairness, that's where all the gas stations were. There were, I think, 6 gas stations along there. Actually, even one where Primo's is. That's a gas station. In fact, the building is the original garage. The reason it's that shape, you drove your car in to get it fixed. And the reason why there's a driveway on either side of Diablo and Harts is you cut through there to get your gas. So what happened, and why couldn't the town even repave the streets there and get sidewalks? And what happened?
Well, that's an excellent question. And it was certainly a challenge, Mayor, as you recall, we struggled with for many, many years because those property owners along Harts Avenue for a very long time owned all that property all the way up to the edge of our public pavement, right? And so in order for the town as an organization to do anything like beautification, we really spent a lot of years trying to work with a number of those property owners. Some of them are a little bit more collaborative than others. And I think we were ultimately very successful in collaborating with them to acquire the sliver of right-of-way we needed to improve our sidewalks, to extend all of that brick banding, to add those decorative lighting and all of the street furniture elements. So to the point that you were making earlier, as much as we would love to, we have no control over every single element, right? We have a vision. We would like to work with our property owners, but at the end of the day, we need partners in the community. And ultimately, we were able to achieve that because of the vision of the council, the persistence of the town, and ultimately the property owners were able to work with us on that. So a vision that was foreseen a long time ago coming to fruition. We spent a lot of years and a lot of money, to be frank, making sure that our beautiful downtown extend all the way northward, all the way into where the San Ramon Valley High School is now.
Right, and I would just add to one of the things that really complicated that, people probably forget, that's the old highway. So that was owned by the state of California. That was their right of way. And particularly on the west side going north, the right of ways went in and out of the properties, and it was never resolved when it had gotten turned over to the county and then ultimately to the town of Danville.
No, if I could just add to that just a little bit. So, the council and commissions have long, as Ty said, looked at the North Harts area and wished that we could do something to encourage more redevelopment in that area. And so like 2 times now, the town council's looked at plans and economic studies to see how we could what we could do there to potentially encourage more development. The problem is that's in a different district. That's our district number 4. Which doesn't allow for as much square footage of buildings and doesn't allow for offsite parking. So you have to park yourself on site. And so, the thought was, well, what if we rezone that to something similar to District 1, where you can build 2 stories and you can, maybe that would be an incentive for property owners to redevelop. And we looked at that several times. The problem is that that would require offsite parking. And the problem is we don't have, we built a new parking lot there off of Rose and Front or Linda Mesa, but there's not enough offsite parking in the North Harts area to allow for that intensity of on-site development. So that's something we continue to look at, over the years. We'll probably relook at it again, maybe as the next phase of this project, but that's been the constraint with North Harts in the past.
Yeah, and I think it's a good opportunity as the town moves forward. 1, there aren't really historic structures in that area. And 2, it does have a lot of open land, which would allow people to build more of that style of architecture that we see in Old Town. Okay, well, that's kind of the background of how we got here and stuff. So I'm going to screen share something, and I'm going to have Jill, because I think you gave us a bunch of homework. So we have an annual town council commissioner workshop. So we have approximately 40 commissioners and the 5 council members, and we get together to sort of talk about our goals for the year and vision. And Jill, I'm going to ask you, what's this homework, and what are you looking for? It's because it's going to relate to what our constituents also get to do. And I'm going to take just a moment here. So I'm looking for that. Apologies. All right, here it. There's that map. There it is. So this is a map of downtown Danville. Jill, why don't you explain what this is and what you're looking for?
Sure. So as part of this process and our outreach and engagement, we will be doing a lot of outreach and engagement, and one component will be also involving the commission and council members. And so this exercise was more of a little bit of a walking tour for our commission and council members to kind of just take a fresh look, walk through downtown and take a fresh look about, the surroundings, and identify the, 5 physical improvements or physical elements that they love about the community, and maybe 5 where there are opportunities for improvement. Because a lot of us, we all go to downtown and then we leave, we know what we like or don't like, but this was kind of meant to, again, take a fresh look and do that. So it was an exercise that we offered out to our council members, and it actually builds upon the outreach, the stakeholder interviews that we'll be having, and the content of what we'll be asking, as well as the community survey we built. And it's a similar thing for our community and our public. While we didn't get into the depth of them taking this exercise, maybe we should make it as a fun activity for them as well. As you go through the questions that are in the survey, they're posed as in similar ways of what are the elements and the things you love, ranking some of the attributes that we have in our community, seeking areas where you think it can be improved, because all this feedback is going to be really important when evaluating recommendations and next steps, and really hearing the voice of the community. Because with any update or anything that we do policy-wide, it's really the community vision and what we want for our community. So this QR code that's there too, or was there, actually, I'll have David put in the master plan. Oh, look at you. He's getting it.
So this is what you're talking about. So the previous slide is what you asked the council and all of our commissioners and board members to get us all involved and up to date. It's a fun exercise that our fellow residents can do. But tell us about this particular QR code and what we can do and how people can participate. And by the way, if you're watching this live, or even if you watch it later in YouTube, if you hold your phone up and use your scan function, just like you're scanning a barcode, it will take you right to this survey. Go ahead, Jill.
Yeah. So that is one of the components of the outreach for our community. And that includes our residents, our property owners, businesses. We want everyone to be engaged and involved and kind of give us their feedback. And so this survey, which launched today and is active today and will be going until February 14th, is a survey again for the community to provide input. And when we say input, we want you to really think about that input when you're thinking about these questions, because it all kind of relates back to what we were talking about in terms of the scope and the placemaking ability, and what truly are enhancements that you see that could be potential opportunities for us in our community. So we would invite you to not only take the survey, but also to share it with your friends. We're going to be doing a lot of outreach with the survey in general. We'll be hosting some community outreach, at some of our neighborhood retailers, Pete's, Lenardi's, Trader Joe's, helping to kind of help people with the survey, or just talk through what's happening with the downtown master plan, or this whole project in general. They'll also, the farmers market, the council will have opportunities to at their office hours to also share information with the public. So we would invite them to pop down and engage there. And we'll also be building, as part of some of our community outreach, stakeholder interviews, and that's where we get a little bit more deep into the property, a selection of business owners, property owners, property management, nonprofits, our business organization, to be able to kind of have these structured interviews that really talk about this, what opportunities they see from a completely different perspective. And then back to you with the homework for you. The exercise will also then transition to our commission council workshop as well. So our public outreach phase is going to be mainly in the January, February months. And this provides opportunity to be able to collect all this data for us to then have the consultant to kind of come back, and we all kind of regroup and start crafting really what the policies and strategies, what's the vision that will be ultimately brought forward to the different commission and councils for approval. So after the phase of the public outreach, then the draft plan will be created. It will go through different public hearings. And again, that's another opportunity for the public to be able to provide input, and then ultimately, to the town council for adoption. And, our timeline is relatively short, and we are looking to, have this this project through and to the council by about early to late summer, to be able to then be able to take advantage of some of the funding that a lot of the communities around America receive, the ARPA funding, to be able to potentially prioritize and help get some of these improvements built.
Absolutely. And I think that the real point of what we're just talking about here is the community engagement. COVID has taught us how to do this virtually. Some of this is going to be our norm, but the survey is really fun to take. I think this is the first time we've done this deep and most robust of a survey, asking very specific things about the downtown, what your values are, and also has a lot of images that you can use to prioritize, which makes it really easy, about what you like best, what you think is most important. And it's really exciting. So again, that code we just had up there, that you can scan that, you can go to the town website. Just following this meeting, I've got an email going out to blast about 13,000 people that live here, and it's going to have that link. All you have to do is click the link, take the survey, and really looking forward to that input.
Yeah, and one more thing, Newell, I'd love to point out too, another way for our community to get involved is David put two different links in the chat. One was related to the survey, but the other was also to our downtown master plan page. And this is going to be an interactive web page that will have, it not only has the information about the project, it gives you an idea of our timeline, where we're at. It will have the survey itself, and then it will also have follow-up of survey results. We're going to be adding frequently asked questions about the project itself, and look for other opportunities to have the community engage on that platform. So we definitely would encourage you to register and sign up for that page. That way, anytime there's an update, you're automatically notified, and it keeps you in the loop throughout the whole process. That's great.
Yeah, really exciting. We've got just a few minutes. We're going to try to go through a couple of questions that we received. But Tom, I'm going to come back to you, sort of again, high-level view. Can you just sort of go back over ultimately what time will this, estimating what time is the public hearings, when will it come to the council? And, we always ask the question, because we'll say it, as Jill mentioned, the council has put away some capital dollars. One of the things we've always looked at was how could we create festive lighting downtown? And the estimates have been well over $1 million just to be able to put lights on trees, and it's because there's no low voltage and things like that. So can you run over just sort of the quick highlight of where we are on the schedule?
Absolutely. Ultimately, let me start with the end and work backwards.
Yeah. Okay.
Our goal is to come back to the town council in early fall of this year to adopt a master plan update. But working back from that, that means we're going to be presenting to the council all of the vetted options and the costs associated with those options in the summer, right? So working backwards from that, our goal is to take a lot of public input in January and February. We're gonna kind of reseed in March, process that input, and come back out in the late spring and present that to the council and the commissions. So a lot of iterative work, asking of the community, what do you think? Taking that input, processing it, churning out options, putting it back out to the commission and the councils. What do you think? Vetting it. And so that iterative process is going to be on a short track time frame of basically 9 months. In the meantime, there is an interim step, as we've mentioned in our press release and on our website. We do want to have some conceptual idea of what capital projects, meaning what infrastructure improvements might we want to pursue. And we have an opportunity to take advantage of the American Rescue Act funds. And it has a very short time frame to implement. So one of the many reasons why this project is on a short track as far as time frame is concerned is we want to be able to capitalize on those funds that we would otherwise have very difficulty coming up with as a very small, fiscally constrained community.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And now let's spend just a couple minutes. I want to keep this exactly to an hour. We have about 8.5 minutes left here. And we did get a couple of questions in email, and I see a couple that are in the chat that's there. And one question that came up with a couple of folks, well, why don't we close the streets off sometimes? And I'll just remind, we have done that in the past. We did that during the pandemic. And the reality was it hurt some businesses, helped some, and sort of that balancing act. It's like when we do special events and we close, those are major closing of the downtowns. It can run 50-50 sometimes. Half the businesses like it, the other half say, you're putting me out of business. And so we try to balance that to try to do different events that will help different businesses at different times of the year. And at this point in time, just like in the survey, we'd ask you, put those ideas down. We have to go through and legitimately vet all of those ideas and publicly talk about what are the pluses to closing the street. Sometimes, what are the logistics, the cost of doing that? And what opportunities do we have, as Jill talked about, all of the kinds of conceptual ideas. So yes, we have done it in the past. We are looking at that, and it's still on the table for discussion. And we've got sort of 3 questions. I'm going to start with the last one. This is from Frank Salzman. And he says, can we get an update, if any, on what is happening at Blackhawk Plaza? Well, this is a lesson in what is in the town of Danville and what is not. Blackhawk Plaza and the theaters are not part of the town of Danville. They are in an unincorporated area within Contra Costa County with a Danville postal code. So just a little lesson in the United States, how your address is derived. The name of the post office is the name of where you live. You have a lot of 06 residents, about half live in the town of Danville, half don't. So the town of Danville's borders going out eastward. As you're heading east on Communidad Sahara, when you get to the intersection of Crow Canyon and Communidad Sahara, everything on that northwest corner where the shopping center is, what we call Blackhawk Shopping Center, that's the beginning of the county, and that goes all the way out. On the left-hand side, the town of Danville goes out to the midpoint of Diablo Vista Middle School. So their playfields are not in the town of Danville. So we really can't, it's not that I don't want to give you an update. I really don't know what's going on out there. It is a beautiful place, and it's had a lot of challenges, like even downtown Danville. Another question is from Amanda, and some of these questions don't necessarily relate to the subject today, but I'll read them anyway. And her first question was, is there a way to submit suggestions about sidewalk and street improvements? Absolutely. You can do that in several ways. You can contact any of us on the council. You can copy all of us. You can go to David or our town manager and submit a request and a question. We track every phone call and every email we get, and we respond to all of those. Now, during COVID, it's been a little more challenging. The volume's a little higher on emails, but we do that. So please feel free, Amanda, to send us any ideas you have on about improvements. Sidewalks, I will tell you, there's a little misunderstanding about sidewalks. Sidewalks are owned by the property owner. So if the town owns, say, like the Village Theater, we own, or a parking lot, we own the curb gutter and sidewalk. However, if you are a business owner and own a building, the sidewalk is your responsibility, your maintenance, and your liability. Same thing in neighborhoods. There are neighborhoods that have sidewalks in Danville and some that don't. Particularly on the west side of Danville, there's not a lot of sidewalks. That was a lot of that development happened back in the 50s and 60s, well before the town was incorporated. So the town does not install those unless it had to do with safe routes for schools. And that has to do within so many feet of that school. So that's kind of a long-winded answer. Also, another one from, I don't know his name, but he says he lives in Danville and I'm upset about one of the converted city public tennis courts at Osage Park to pickleball. It's too loud and it makes us tennis players wait for a tennis court. Please do not convert any more courts. If you build pickleball courts, can you revert this Osage court back to tennis, please? There are far more tennis players than pickleball players in Danville. Pickleball is too noisy a sport to play together with tennis. It is for different people and we try to find opportunities for everybody. And our Parks Commission is a great opportunity to share those ideas. They do have a master plan to develop more courts in lots of different places. So I'm sure they'd love to hear that. And also another one from Brad Blake. Brad has done some development in Danville here, has lived in the area for many, many years, as well as his family. And he says he thought for many years the town should consider closing Hart Avenue from Friday at 6 p.m. till Sunday at 9 p.m. If not every weekend, then maybe something like the first and third weekends of the month, or perhaps from June through September. This would create a great public space and minimal cost other than town personnel to set up the barriers and to clean up afterwards. I think the creation of restaurant parklets has demonstrated a public demand for this outdoor space. The loss of street parking during these times would have minimal effect on downtown businesses. Brad, thank you for that. We have, just to give you a little history, we actually tried on Thursdays, I think it was, we had farmers market downtown and closed off the streets down there. And I'll be honest, it wasn't very successful. Saturday is still hugely successful. As you know, it's just, it's fun to be downtown. You have to be patient about parking on Saturdays when the farmers market there, but the town is the most active that day of the week. We did try during the pandemic, as I mentioned earlier, to do some street closures. And again, it worked and it didn't. We tried just the weekends and it didn't work well. And it completely closed down some businesses. So maybe there's an opportunity to look at closing just a small portion of a street for a certain kind of a festival week or a food fair, things like that. But Brad, thanks for that. Nicola or Diane, do we have any other questions that you've gotten since we've started?
We did have one comment and a question. I'm excited about the planning process and the future vision for Danville. Great to see. When looking at the input survey discussed here, there are many good questions and ideas, but I was surprised that there was no mention or questions about the ways to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, use of mass transit, increased biking or walking, e-vehicles. It seems we're missing an opportunity if we don't take this into account at the same time. How can we incorporate opportunities to reduce our impact on global warming while we're redesigning aspects of the town?
Great, Diane, thanks for that. And, you know, in that area, there's a lot of different levels that the town is dealing with that. Myself and Renee Morgan both serve on Recycle Smart, and we oversee our recycling program and our solid waste program. And the good news is Danville, the La Miranda area, and Alamo are probably one of the leaders in the state of California. We have some new opportunities coming out over the year. Part of it's based on legislation. Part of it's just forward thinking. And yes, we've created ordinances to eliminate plastic bags, to eliminate the bags in restaurants, to get recyclable materials. We still have more work to do on that. So thank you for that.
There's
Diana?
also,
Yeah,
there's a question, Newell, about FOS that I'm going to throw over to David. And it says, is there any discussion regarding remodeling the FOS space?
Yeah, so we actually have a development plan application in for the FOS. That's a site that is designated as our downtown business district number 11, which is assigned to some of our bigger sites downtown, like the Danville Hotel site, the FOS site, the Beverages and More site. So those are sites that we've long known are underdeveloped as far as what our development standards allow for those sites. And I don't know, it's been over a year ago, we received a preliminary application that we took to a study session with our town council and planning commission and design review board. It is to basically the existing FOS building would be demolished, and there would be a new, I think it's around 4,000 square foot of commercial space along Diablo or along Harts Avenue, and 37 condominium units behind that, over a subterranean parking garage. So that's a development application in review. It will go through a process through our design review board and onto the planning commission at some point over the next first part of this year.
I would just add to that, and this is going to be our last comment, and we're right at the 1 hour mark on this. Just to add what David said, FOS or Fazoli Perush, who is the owner of FOS Restaurant, actually owns the property. He's one of the few restaurateurs that actually had the opportunity to buy that property back in the 90s. He lives in Danville, just a few blocks from the restaurant. And just to let you know, this is his decision that he's making as the property owner. This is the third time he's looked at redeveloping this property. And I spoke to him recently, and he's actually mentioned that, yes, this is what he wants to do. But he is going to open another restaurant. It'll probably be a little bit different. There will be a restaurant space and one retail space there. He's excited about this opportunity. This is also part of his family, that they are part owners in this. And so the question comes to is, well, why doesn't the town stop him from doing this? Well, that property, like all the property owners, and this is a property rights state, as sort of left-leaning as the state is, it really is a property rights state. Cities and towns don't have that kind of authority. You have to create zoning, and the zoning's been in place probably for 40 years, that what they're proposing to do is they have a legal right. They've just never chosen to do that. Some properties do. So what is important to understand is that development doesn't occur in Danville unless it meets a very long, rigorous review process. And when it finally gets to the standards, the high standards we set in Danville, then projects can go forward. So FOS has worked more than a decade trying to get a project through, and he believes he's presenting a project that meets all of the standards in Danville. And we'll look forward to the public hearing process on that and invite everybody to participate, to add your comments. So I would like to close today and thank particularly this wonderful group of 3 former planners and 1 current planner, but our assistant town manager, Ty Williams, our economic development director, Jill Bergman, our chief of planning, David Crompton. Thank you all for your commitment to Danville. Thank you for everything that you've done to help make this a wonderful place to live in. Ty, I know you live here, your daughter goes to school here. You are a bicyclist, and all of us here value that care and concern. And I'll leave you with one last thing. We'll be back here on February 4th, and we're going to talk about recreation and our recreation exposition coming up. And we'll have Henry Perez Alonso here and an exciting program. And at each one of these, we'll give you a little bit of an update on things we've talked in the past, just so we can keep you sort of in the loop about what's happening. So for those of you listening, if you're on my email list, you'll get an email here in about 45 minutes, which will give you that link to take our survey. I'll leave you with, please take the survey. Please let us know your thought. We look forward to it. And again, we wish you on behalf of the entire council, a happy new year, a healthy, prosperous new year. Thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll see you later. Thank you.
New Year.